Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Are you the burden or will you be the blessing? How can you become the generational change maker for good in your family? Thanksgiving is tomorrow here in the United States, and for many of us, that means gathering around the table or home hopping with family and maybe close friends to enjoy delicious meals and warm company. So many different generations gather together during this time to celebrate life and reminisce on the old days, sometimes even passing down the old stories to the younger generation who may not have been there when they were around. And even when circumstances could be better, it's just a time, especially for me, this is one of my favorite holidays, honestly. But it's a time to pause and reflect on what we have to be grateful for, and to take a long think also about how things can improve. Now, for many of us, we've benefited from the previous generations that came before us. They've passed down their skills to us, their values to us, and it has gone from generation to generation. It's become tradition, just like this holiday. It's a major tradition here in the States. But that doesn't always mean that the tradition is set in stone or it cannot be improved, or for some, it doesn't even mean that the tradition is good. Okay? Because just as often as benefits are passed down, burdens can be passed down as well. And those are the things that we don't want to continue, that we don't want to become tradition from one generation to the next. So, when we're talking about the area of estate planning, this is all too common, as two-thirds of United States adults fail to ever make an estate plan for there to be clear instructions for the next generation to follow or make use of. This means that the majority of us can be making it up as we go along. Okay? So, if that's the case, why not make up a new good story that will continue to benefit those following after us, instead of continuing the cycle of sameness that doesn't produce what's best for the next generation? If that's what you're about, then here are three practical ways that you can become the change maker in your family for good. And if you're just joining us, thank you. I'm attorney Tina Patterson, principal attorney of Patterson Justice Council, PLLC, headquartered here in Detroit, Michigan. Now let's get into the three ways, the three, not even ways, the three steps we can take to become the generational change makers for good in our families. The first one is to change your mind. It all starts up here. Change your mind. Decide and declare that a new thing is going to start with you. Now, I can speak on this personally from my own personal and professional experience of what I've seen, and how this can particularly be true for African Americans and other historically marginalized groups who may have not had much for long, or who may have come from a family history of poverty or oppressive circumstances. With that continually repeating from generation to generation, it can feel difficult, sometimes impossible, to believe that you can actually change the trajectory of your family's lineage. But the reality is that you can do it. Okay, you can do it if you change your mind to believe that it's true, it is within your power to do it. It is within your ability to do it, and it is a reality in this lifetime, that you don't have to wait for somebody else to do it, that you can do it. Okay, so the tradition of poverty, the tradition of neglect, sometimes maybe abuse, or the tradition of just not aspiring for more, those kind of negative things, it doesn't need to continue. Especially, again, if it's this kind of regressive and negative factors that don't move the needle forward. Things do not have to always be as they are, even if they have actually been quite good as well. Even if you do come from a stable middle class family, greater is possible. And that's not to say that it's not good, but there's good, there's better, and there's best. Okay. And so we can always make improvements and changes, and just take into consideration what works for today and what might work for tomorrow. Today's things might not work for tomorrow. So just always keep that in mind. But again, you have to want it. You have to want to do it, and you have to believe that you can have it and do it. It is my belief that each generation must improve for the next. But this can only be done when you change your mind and decide that you're going to do it. And also, reflect on your past experiences with losing a loved one. Many families come to me as an attorney with horror stories of what was left behind or what went wrong upon the passing of a relative, unsettled matters, family division, fights, conflicts, all of that stuff. And this leaves a burden on families who are left to figure out what to do now. How do I pay X, Y, and Z bill? What do I do with this property? How do I maintain it? It's such a hassle for me. I'm already trying to live my own life. How can I be expected to add this onto it as well? So many times clients come to me because they do not want this to be their reality. They've experienced it for themselves. They've experienced it with, when mom passed away, when sister passed away, grandma, aunt, brother, whoever it is, they've seen it happen and they want better. And I could really go on and on about these just, horrific, less than ideal circumstances, but I'm not going to get too down in the dumps today. We're going to keep it on the up and up so we can save all the horror stories for later, for another time. But the point is that the first step toward making this change to becoming the generational change maker for good in your family is to first change your mind to determine that that is exactly what you're going to do. Now, the second step is to channel your motivation. Okay, so now we feel good. We're going to make it better. We're going to be the ones. We're going to change it all. And then we lose our job. We're going to do all these great things. And then we get a foreclosure notice, right? Along the way, life is still going to do what it does. Okay. And this includes throwing setbacks like fastballs. Again, job loss, family drama, piling responsibilities, bills, kids, the list goes on and on and on. When we are on our journeys, it can feel like we will never reach our destination. And when it comes to estate planning, it may seem like we don't even have anything to give to the next generation. So why bother? We'll have nothing to leave behind anyway. Right. But again, examine these beliefs because they're really not as true as you think that they are. I often hear people tell me that they don't have anything. I remember clearly getting an email from a client who was interested in creating an estate plan for her children, but she didn't have anything except for the house. Nothing but a house? And that's nothing to you, right? Nothing but a house, nothing but a bank account, just a little bit of money in it. It's not anything. Well, let's go back to step one. Let's change your mind. A house is something. It's a shelter for your family. It's a place to call home. It's a source of equity to tap into. It's an asset if you're going to rent out a room, perhaps if you sell it to get more. I mean, the list goes on. Just because it's not what you think it is today doesn't mean that it doesn't have potential for tomorrow. The same thing with the bank account. Okay, the same bank account that can hold just $1 can hold $10,000, can hold $100,000, can hold $1,000,000. So change your mind and channel your motivation, your why. Why are you doing this? What is driving you? Who's counting on you? Who will benefit from your actions? What family member can you help or save? There's always a bigger reason than the action we see before us, than the fear we see before us. And in times like that, where we feel stuck, we feel like we're going in reverse, we must think on the things that drive us, literally make us move, okay? So that we can move forward with positive and life-changing momentum to bring about the changes that we desire to elevate our family's future into higher and better living. So that was number two, to channel that motivation because we're going to have these setbacks. I tell my clients often, there aren't any guarantees and things are not always going to go the way we want them to go. We have to keep the goal in mind and move forward anyway. That's just what it is. Okay. But with that in mind, let's go to step three, which is check for mistakes. Okay. So after we do pick ourselves up from whatever setback it is, maybe we even hit cruise control, right? We're reaching the destination. We still have to often check to see if we're missing something. Did we leave something behind? Did something fall off that we forgot to pick up? When it comes to estate planning, a common mistake is to think that the plan is set in stone, one and done, never touch it again. No, that's wrong. Don't do that. This leaves outdated plans to govern modern realities. Okay, I literally see cases where a will was done 30 years ago. Everything has changed. But now, they want to go by the same 30-year-old will with something totally different. Or clients that call and they want to update because someone passed away, because there was a divorce, because X, Y, and Z. Life changes, so the plan has to change. Okay. That doesn't mean that the purpose for the plan changes, but the plan itself has to adjust for that purpose. All right. So, like I said, death of loved ones that have already occurred, old plans, often new things that come along the way get missed. So, newly born children or grandchildren, new spouses, even new property that we fail to protect by updating deeds, by including them in the trust, by adding beneficiaries, bank accounts, right? New money's coming in. We forgot to add the beneficiary to it. A plan that I often, or a real life scenario I often tell is the story of Kobe Bryant, who was a meticulous planner, had everything set up, passed away tragically and suddenly, and his youngest daughter was only about 6 months old, I believe. And if I remember correctly, she hadn't yet been updated to the trust, right? Because she's still so new. And it's not that he would have gotten to it eventually, but life just happened and tragedy struck. So this is why it's always important to just go back and check for those mistakes. Did we miss something, right? Check for it. Again, no plan is etched in stone. One of the biggest problems is thinking that, oh, because I don't have everything I need right now, I can't start. So, why bother? Or that's not going to happen, so I'm not going to check for that. No, 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 no. The opposite is true. Move now. Okay, just because all these pieces are moving, you move too. And you'll pick up more along the way. And you'll keep checking, as we did back in step 2, to make sure that we include all the additions that we're going to acquire along the way. Keep checking for all the things that we're going to pick up, okay? And just be flexible in making these adjustments. Be flexible, but also be diligent in checking in every so often to make sure that the plans that we've made are still right for us, okay? Just because you want to plan a 30-year plan doesn't mean you need to wait 30 years to make the plan, okay? Start today. Update it every year. If it's still looking good every year, update it every 2 years, every 5 years. If something happens in between that's critical, update it then. But keep checking for these things, all right? So nothing is missed and mistakes are not made that could cause devastation. All right, so that concludes our steps for how we can become the generational change makers for good. Again, that is to change your mind, decide you're going to do it, channel your motivation, think about your why you're going to do it when things don't look like they can even be done. All right, and then check for mistakes. Periodically review your progress. See if you need to change something, add something, remove something, okay? But don't just think it's one and done. So with this information in mind, we can begin to set plans in motion, again, for how we wish to steer the direction of our families for generations to come. Thinking on these things truly does make the difference in becoming the generational change makers for good that we want to be for our families. It is not enough just to acquire things with no plans, because that leaves the burden on who comes after us to figure out what to do. They may not know, and they may not have the same plans in mind that we do. They might have malicious plans in mind when we have beneficial ones. Who knows, right? But it's not up for them to decide, it's up for you to decide. And even if you do make plans, even estate plans, it's not enough to just make the plans if we don't have a clear purpose and direction for why. Again, why are we doing this? And caveat, tell someone we trust about it. And you can see my previous video on this, okay? But just kind of leaving plans up for grabs or not making them at all, it just leads back into the cycle of sameness, once again, leaving the next generation scrambling to start all over again and starting from scratch. And that's not what we want to do. So as we ease into this holiday season, let's pause and reflect on what you might want it to look like next year. What is Thanksgiving going to look like for you next year? What is the end of 2024, goodness, going to look like for you next year? What is it going to look like in 5 years? 10 years from now, what will it look like? Imagine how good it can be if you don't think it's good now. Or imagine how much better it can be if you think it's already good. There is so much power in imagining a better future. The key then is to act on it by believing it can happen. And we can do it also by keeping these steps in mind and moving forward with focus and clarity to achieve them. So that is the end of the video today. I hope it has helped you. If so, please do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We are here every Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And finally, to all of our clients, to all of our family, friends, our community, both local here in Michigan and online YouTube, this is attorney Tina Patterson wishing you a happy